Hey, welcome to another episode. I'm Brian Rosenthal, your host, and today I'm super excited to welcome William Gasner. He's a six-time founder, listen well, six-time founder, seven-figure e-commerce seller, and the co-founder and CMO of Stack Influence, a leading micro-influencer marketing platform for DTC e-commerce brands. He has been featured in Forbes, Business Insider, and Wired for his thoughts on the influencer industry and the Amazon marketing ecosystem. Hey, William, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
Yeah, no, my apologies for the technical issues we had in trying to record this episode in the last few minutes. Sometimes technology works in our favor and sometimes against us. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we'll discuss this time to try to see how we can make influencer marketing work in our favor, talking about the brands side. So, influencer marketing, first, let's start there if you want. It's kind of a buzzword these days, but I feel that it's kind of a black box for many brands since they don't know how to either get started or scale it. So I would love to talk about both scenarios today. So for brands starting out with influencer marketing, of course, what are the best ways to get started?
Great question. So when most people think of influencers, right, you think of the celebrities, the Kardashians, kind of these people with millions of followers. And the reality is social media has changed over the past few years, where now it's not just about follower base, right? It's about actually the content that is being created and who is actually engaging with that content. And big things in the social platforms that have evolved are that no longer are the days where you post something and every single person who's following you actually sees that post. It's really the only people who care about that content and again are really engaged with your profile that are going to end up seeing it. And so it's opened up basically these opportunities for these much smaller creators, people with sometimes even only a few thousand followers, to become these really, really valuable promoters. And the reality behind that is now, besides the social platforms not just showing content to only people who are engaged, they will now also show content to people beyond the follower base, right? So you can again have a few thousand followers and actually get a post that goes viral and reaches millions of people. So when brands are thinking about getting started, my biggest recommendation is honestly reach out to people who are within your niche and focus less actually on follower base and focus more on the content that they're generating and how kind of what their expertise is in your product, your niche, your category. Um, and a lot of times you'll find, if it's a good match, that these types of social media users are willing to even do promotions just in exchange for your product without, or maybe just an affiliate link. So without actually getting paid a lot of money. And it can be an amazing way to just kickstart your brand. If you're even an established brand, actually drive a lot of brand awareness, get great content, and tap into an engaged audience that you might not no longer have had or have had in the past. And so that's kind of my main recommendation. And what the industry calls nowadays these types of smaller creators, they say nano or micro influencers. And that's actually what our platform specializes in. But any brand can really tap into this audience themselves. They may have a challenge scaling and managing it, which we can help with, but it can still be a really, really effective strategy to get started.
Interesting what you were saying, and I have a lot of questions already for you. The first one is, micro influencers versus celebrities. You said that it's no longer about the how many followers they have, but about the influence they have, how many how much people engage with the content. So I wanted to know, followers on one hand give you a, you know, let's say numerical way or factual, way to assess whether someone uh, has reach or not. On the flip side, influence, engagement. How do you measure that? How can you tell if someone you don't know is a good fit for your brand or not for that matter?
Another great question, Brian. So regarding engagement, there's a lot of different tools out there that can help you kind of dive deep into different social profiles and not just see, like you said, their kind of blanket follower base and assume that they're going to reach a million people or hundreds of thousands of people, but actually looking deeper into, are those followers actually engaging, right? And a few basic metrics are, do people like the comments or content that you're producing? Do they comment on it? Do they share it, right? Even without those tools, very simple things that anyone can do is, if you go into a profile, just look through some of their past posts and kind of compare the numbers of those engagement metrics, those likes, those comments, those shares on each post, correlated to that, their actual follower base. And what you'll end up seeing is, and it can vary across the board, but industry standards, and going back to kind of mega influencers or celebrities versus these smaller creators or micro and nano influencers, micro and nano end up having about 5 to 10 times higher engagement levels. And it makes a lot of sense correlatively, in the sense that a smaller creator, their follower base is a lot of people they know or are really passionate, or their friends, their family, their close acquaintances. Whereas a larger celebrity or mega influencer may have a lot of followers that just kind of are following them for clout or just for kind of attraction. If anyone's doing influencer marketing, right, there's a part of it that is for obviously reach and impression rates. But then the second part is obviously, and probably more importantly, is converting someone who is following them or seeing this content into becoming your D2C customer. And that's why engagement is very, very important. And one of the most important metrics we look at when choosing influencers who are allowed to go onto our platform and who to actually work with. Because again, it's the most correlative thing to a conversion. So again, you can check it out yourself, or really there's a lot of different tools out there to just analyze profiles and see those metrics in kind of a more in-depth way.
Yeah. And what are some of the most common, let's say, deal structures between brands and influencers? I have seen a lot from, both well-established brands and brands starting out with this, that, some of them say, I will do, product seeding, I'll give away products to each influencer, and probably 20% of them or 50% of them or so will post something. Some don't have the luxury of, they are not able to do that, or they don't want to, or they are not confident they will actually post. So how do you typically see that these deals go?
So they can vary quite dramatically, right? Very common things are just a pay flat fee per post, right? Some people do monthly kind of packages, relationships with influencers where they might have to post multiple times every week and do different types of content, and they're kind of getting paid a monthly fee. On the opposite side of the spectrum is literally no payments, no monetary payments, and just, as you mentioned, product seeding or product compensation in exchange for a post. That's actually the world that we play in at Stack Influence. We find that to be the most effective way, in the sense that if someone is doing something for a product and not getting paid, it means they actually want the product, right? So their promotion ends up being much more authentic. And authenticity is kind of, it's a buzzword, but it's a very important aspect in the social media realm and influencer marketing in general. However, not every person is willing to do something just for a free product and not getting paid, right? And so adding some extra affiliate commissions, or if they drive a sale, for example, they get a percentage of that sales profit. Those are things that you can kind of add on top to entice maybe even larger influencers who normally wouldn't be willing to do something just for a product, to do that sort of collaboration without having to pay them some sort of large monetary fee. And those are pretty much the most common ways of, whether it's affiliate, free product, paid, or kind of a subscription-based model to deal with influencers. But again, if you can manage it, I recommend the product compensation model over everything else.
What are some of the challenges that brands face when using micro influencers that you have seen at least?
So there are definitely a few challenges. It's not all roses in the micro influencer world. The biggest challenges are, first off, scale. So the advantage to a larger creator, right, is that they do have a large reach, right? Even if their engagement levels may percentage wise may be lower. So you can work with a handful of these 100,000 million follower base influencers, and doesn't take too much to find them and also negotiate deals. Might cost you an arm and a leg to work with them, but that's another story. On the micro or nano influencer side of things, really only working with a handful of them may not be that effective for you, right? You are much cheaper, right? Like you're giving a lot of times free products away, et cetera. But even with their engagement very high, their follower base may limit that unless they're really creating that super great content that may go beyond their follower base, which absolutely can happen. So the name of the game with these smaller creators is you want to scale them out. You want to work with dozens, hundreds. Some brands on our platform actually even work with thousands. And yeah, and at that level, right, you're aggregating this smaller follower base, but you're multiplying that high engagement level, right? And now you're reaching millions of people, but you're diversifying across a whole bunch of smaller channels. Now, a challenge with that is actually finding people, right? It's finding enough people in your specific niche who want your product and are willing to do something for a low monetary fee or just a free product, so it actually is cost effective to scale. That's really the first big challenge I see brands facing, and why they come to Stack Influence to solve that as one aspect. The second is management. Is you'd think it'd be very straightforward to just send a product to someone to get them to post, but sometimes you ship something to someone and they never end up actually doing something for you, or they don't represent your brand in the right way, or don't follow specific guidelines kind of that you'd like them to speak about regarding your brand and your niche. And also just even paying them and vetting them and making sure they have the right engagement levels, don't have scandalous things in their profile, et cetera. Those are all additional challenges if you can find that scale. And so my always recommendation there is, if you're just starting out in the influencer world, reach out to a few of them, right? Get your feet wet, figure out what works, what doesn't, and kind of find your target niche audience, right? And then from there, when you're trying to scale, right, you may have to build out an internal team to do so, or look for platforms that can assist you with that. Because as much as technology can sometimes hurt us, it can really help, and especially in the influencer world, right? And so using technologies like Stack Influence, and there's numerous other ones out there, which can help you with that kind of first vetting criteria, second, actually communication, third, ensuring they actually post things on time and in general, and then fourth, actually analyzing those results, collecting assets, and kind of making sure you actually got a good ROI. So those are basically my recommendations, and in solving those major issues when dealing with these smaller creators.
Yeah, I have my agency in which we help DTC brands grow through paid ads and email marketing, and we have never done, whenever they say, do you generate like UGC content, like, and we say like, well, if you provide us with the raw content, we can generate a lot of ad material, but for some reason we felt like we we believe in UGC 100%, or influencer. I don't want to say UGC, but influencer content, influencer marketing 100%. But it's a totally different animal, as you said. You need to have people. It's not only about saying, "Hey, John Doe, generate these for us." We all
Yeah.
wish it was as easy as that. It requires, even with the right technology, it requires from someone to be following those, like the reaching out to influencers or vetting influencers, assessing what they have, analyzing what they have, let's say recorded for the ads or whatever type of content. So who who is in charge of that part? Uh, let's say from the brand's side, who should they hire if they don't have anybody for these alone, let's say specifically?
So again, technology can solve a lot of things, and that is my first recommendation. But if you have a very limited budget, um, I found when I was first starting out, so also a little just quick background on myself, and I appreciate that intro. But I'm a numerous e-commerce founder. Used to use a lot of influencer marketing to not only launch brands, but then also scale them. And the major issue we faced all of these same issues that I just discussed, right? Finding the right people, vetting them, managing them, getting it out, right? We found it to be super effective, but it was like this process of dealing with all these people and doing it actually at a proper scale that was effective. And that was the first impetus to create Stack Influence and create the technology that is actually the foundation of where we are today. But before we did that, hiring out VAs can be a really effective tactic, and kind of hiring out different people for different tasks, right? You may kind of strike it lucky and find one person who can do it all for you, but
Never, never. We never have. Let's be real. Yeah.
but yeah, it is finding a few people, right? Like, because there's different steps, right? Is finding someone who can source a bunch of different profiles, and there's a skill set behind that. And then finding out someone who can actually craft a good pitch, and we call in the industry like an influencer brief. And then also actually manage that funnel of people. And there's also kind of makeshift tools using some technology that might not be an influencer software, but kind of using like an Airtable, et cetera, somewhat of a CRM to actually put people through a funnel. Keeping track of where people are is very key, because you quickly, if you're scaling it out, you'll quickly lose track on who you send products to, who's still testing it out, who's actually created content, was that content effective, do you want to actually continue working with them, et cetera. And so building out somewhat of a CRM, at least use a spreadsheet to do it, and putting some people on different tasks within your organization is a good way to start it out. But I will say that the softwares out there are well worth the time spent, and you will do it cheaper than actually hiring it out. And that's what we did it initially. And the tools we built out were effective enough to create a business around. So that's my recommendations on if you're just starting out versus actually find this to be an effective tactic for your D2C brand and want to actually scale.
What if a brand wanted to use Stack Influence? What's the process, for getting started with this?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, and this is a reality for all influencer marketing, not every brand works for us. So there are just some products that people are not willing to promote on social media, or it's very just too niche, right? So as an
Let me
example,
let me
yeah,
interrupt. No, sorry. Go ahead with the example. Maybe you answer my question.
okay, cool. For example, athlete's foot cream, right, is very, very popular product, sells millions of dollars a year. But people really just aren't willing to go on social media and talk about how great their foot fungus is, right?
Right.
So there's certain like medical conditions that can be sensitive, but then there's certain things in that realm. For example, acne products actually work really well for influencer marketing. And the bottom line is people are becoming more comfortable talking about kind of like self-care, et cetera. So there are some of these different products that can work and can't in very similar niches, right? Also, if it's like a very specific target, right? So you only want to deal with pets, but you only want to deal with this one specific breed of pets, right? Maybe you can find a few, and in those realms, I usually recommend going after actually larger creators as opposed to the micro, because like there's going to be just so many. If you're not scaling out the micros, it's just really not gonna. You're not going to diversify your risk enough and get enough of a larger audience to make it effective. So you may want to go that paid route and find someone, because there's an influencer for everything. Find someone with a larger follower base who just focuses specifically on that niche, right? But in the micro realm, like again, you want to scale. So again, it doesn't work for everyone. Any follow-up question to that? And I'll go into how the next steps, if you're the right fit, how we can work together.
My apologies for interrupting you, but
Oh,
yes, you did ask my question. I was going to
okay.
ask you if it was related to product market fit or not. But yeah, you said that you could be doing millions in revenue, but then maybe it's taboo or something like that, talking about that specific product or product category, and then nobody wants to go, on camera talking about that or promoting that. So yeah, I can totally see that. So I want to ask you a question on, the following. So we discussed, what to look for in an influencer, whether it's micro, celebrity, etc. But what about from the what happens, let's say, from the influencer's perspective? What do they look, what do they look for in a brand? What do they want to see from the brands and to be willing to do something for them?
Really good question. So following up also on your product market fit kind of comment, that is an absolute reality to influencer marketing as well. And it leads into the current question you have regarding what things are influencers looking for in a brand and what are they willing to do. So if your product is not that desirable, right? Maybe you could pay someone a lot of money to represent it, but a lot of times, even with monetary payments, certain brands just aren't willing to represent that because there is this big factor of it's not just about the product, it's about will this product relate to my audience and will they care? So big reasons influencers actually want to collaborate with a brand are one, to actually engage their audience, to provide value to them, right? And to represent something that represents themselves. A second thing is on that level of engaging with your audience is to grow more followers, right? Is to become a more popular influencer. A third is to actually kind of build an influencer resume. So obviously, more established brands have a bit higher advantage in the influencer realm because influencers want to collaborate with them so that they can kind of not only build this resume as a representation of this brand I collaborated with, but also as a way to leverage that relationship to get more brand opportunities, right? And then I would say the last thing is if they believe it can be sold, right?
Right.
We've had a lot of success with brands creating longer term kind of affiliate relationships, whether that may not just be that first relationship, maybe it's just for a product compensation or maybe for a flat fee. But once an influencer realizes like this is a really good product and they love the brand, a lot of times they're willing to continue to promote that product across a variety of their channels and do it without any extra free products, but just for an affiliate commission. And that is something that I really recommend brands do is almost build out, whether they're leveraging a software or doing this kind of themselves, start to build out this kind of internal community of always on people who are consistently promoting your brand. Because there's just natural psychological tendencies of consumers and human beings to not just convert on something the first time they see it, but if they consistently see it over time, right? And so those ongoing relationships are really valuable in the influencer realm.
What are some of the most common ways or type of engagements you've seen between brands and influencers? And I'm referring to the type of content. Like, is it only for, let's say, whitelisting? Like, I don't know, the influencer you can run ads for your brand, but on using, the influencers profile, or is it for organic only? Is it for a combination? Is it for you as a brand to use it in your own ads manager? Is it for something else? What else have you seen?
So variety of ways you can work with influencers, right? To a few of the things you just mentioned. One is some people just do it for content, right? Is they just want some image assets, some video assets that they can now leverage across their different ad channels and marketing channels, right? And they're not going to post on social media. But we consider that an influencer content because they're creating, an industry calls it UGC or user generated content, creating
Yeah.
some content that is a real experience that now creates social proof when that brand actually promotes that. Other things that you mentioned is someone, and sometimes people won't even create content. Sometimes they're promoting some pre-made content on their social profile to their audience, right? So that's kind of another aspect to, maybe it's a software company and they can't hold a physical product or demonstrate it, right? So they're kind of sharing a tutorial video or whatever it may be. And so it's more about this promotional side. A third layer, which you also mentioned, is what the industry calls whitelisting. TikTok, it's called Spark Ads. And for those of you who don't know what that is, basically after an influencer creates content on social media, they can give permission to the brand to take over that content and run ads through it. So instead of you on your own, let's say, brand Instagram account or TikTok account, you running an ad, you're funding an ad that's getting run through an influencer's actually profile. And that's something that can be extremely effective for ad conversions because it, going back to kind of the value of authenticity, it looks more authentic, right? It's, you got the money behind it to push up those impressions and those engagements, but it's coming from a more authentic, real person's profile. And last but not least is actually promoting not just on social media, but a lot of these kind of influencers now have diversified their channels to email or Slack or Discord groups and different kind of Facebook groups, different communities, right? And so you can then also get kind of promotions throughout these more niche controlled audiences. At Stack Influence, we try to bundle it all together and provide as much value. So we do give all of our clients full rights license to the content. They're getting a social promotion out of it. We also provide ways for them to engage with the influencers to create these whitelisting advertising campaigns. And then we also encourage people create these longer term affiliate relationships where now the influencer can spread their message and their affiliate link across other channels beyond just social media, right? So if you're doing it the best way possible, try to do everything. But sometimes, depending on what your brand needs are, maybe you just need a few pieces of content for some ad creative, and you want to create some relationships to do that, you know?
Yeah. You said something that remind me of something that, people have been saying a lot of things in the last, let's say year or so about UGC. People claimed, UGC is dead, blah, blah, blah. And what I agree with is that AGC, actor generated content, people can tell. Most times consumers are smarter than ever and they can tell that there's a promotion involved. So probably they don't trust as much in the recommendation as if it wasn't. So how can brands, scale while keeping this authenticity that help this, to keep working at scale, you know?
Yeah. So you're completely right. The UGC realm can be hard, right? Because not every piece of content is equal and will convert, right? So few things that, going back, the more authentic, the better. We're now on social media, we're bombarded by content, right? Especially kind of like photoshopped, like beautiful content with models, etc. And even kind of UGC has also just now bombarded our feeds. And so consumers have naturally just become very accustomed to our attention span split. So it's hard to kind of now break through than it ever has been. And again, the more authentic, the better. And goes back to something I mentioned earlier. And a big reason we have focused on product compensation as opposed to monetary payments. Not to say that we don't want influencers getting paid, because everyone deserves to be paid for their work, right? But we want to create these relationships that turn into more, again, affiliate or longer term kind of paid collaborations. But the initial relationship, finding someone who's willing to do something for a product, right? There's nothing better than that, because a testimonial from a real customer who tried your product And we even have actually features on the platform where if someone doesn't like the product um, that they were kind of given, we tell them they don't have to promote it, right? They only have to promote products they actually really love. And the reason we do that, and we still will kind of compensate them in a bit for even receiving that product. But the reason we do that is the content just ends up being, it goes back to that authenticity. It's just way more real. And that is really what is now breaking through to audiences these days, because the UGC realm has blown up. And now you have all these creators who kind of are, as you said, AGC, like they're more actors. They kind of like have a certain script. And now we're even entering into this AI generated world where it's like, you don't even need a real human. You can kind of
Get me
have,
started on that. Don't get me started on that, please. I hate all these like AI comments and everywhere, like LinkedIn or yeah. Sorry, you hit a
yeah,
nerve.
no, it's crazy. The world we are entering. And I do see, I actually just wrote a Forbes article about this, and like the advent of AI in UGC, um, in the sense that it may assist with some content creation, right? But if you're solely relying on it, and whether it's, as you mentioned, like people posting on LinkedIn or X, and just everything is now, you can tell, and it's a weird thing, but you can tell that it's curated by an AI, right? There's something I actually wrote about in the article called the Uncanny Valley. I don't know if you've heard of this, but it was kind of this psychological theory that a robotics professor came up with, which is that the more something becomes, like, speaking of robots or kind of artificially generated images, the more it becomes lifelike, right? The more humans start to like resonate towards it and kind of like it, right? If it's not lifelike at all, it's scary, right? But then it hits this point where it's getting very close to reality, where that, and this is the uncanny valley, everything, all of that desire and um, kind of affinity towards that drops off and people become very uncomfortable. And that's kind of the realm we're now getting into with not only just AI generated images and graphics, but also just like written content, right? Like human beings are smart and we can tell when it's like it's too curated, too almost perfect, but there's something off, right? And as opposed to that providing layers or feelings of desirability, it like totally puts us off. And now we just like stay away from it, right? And that is can be similar with actors, right? And so that's where it's like you know someone's kind of faking this pitch, and you kind of zone out and don't listen to it or keep scrolling. And when someone, even if the graphic or the video is kind of with an iPhone and a little blurry, right? It can convert really well. Like I remember I was running a pet product back in the day, and we authentically were just getting content from our customers and testing a whole bunch of different ad creative. Got some like amazing curated content, like with like professional cameras and everything else. And there's this one video of half kind of shaky and blurry of a guy feeding his dog, and his dog's super excited. Um, and that was by far the best converting ad, right? And it's like, it's the last thing you would have expected. Like, because it's just like, I paid a few $1,000s for this other perfectly curated, edited piece of content, and this like basically blurry video kind of was the winner. So
Yeah, I speak with a lot of founders here in the pod and outside the pod too, and some of them say there's a lot of founder-led content, and I love that because I always say the same thing, like to my clients specifically, but to any founder I speak with, really, it's like I ask them, do you believe that what you sell will benefit your customers? Sure, of course. Great. So why don't you go out there and, you know, say it out loud and shout it everywhere, and so everyone can possibly hear that message, right? And they say, oh, well, so if you are a founder and you get out there, one of the founders of Little Saints, it's a very cool beverage brand. They said that they tried, paying a lot of money for, these curated and good looking videos. But then when they went out there dressed as the ingredients of the beverages they sell, which is basically mushroom because it's a mushroom cocktail drink. So they were dressed as Damiana, Reishi, Lion's Mane, and dancing. And they said, I look like an idiot. I know I look like an idiot, but who cares? I
Yeah.
entertain because now you need to either educate, entertain, or, so, and they have fun. They give the brand a unique personality. People see the founders as well, and they can see through and read through it as well, right? So but I wanted to say something else about what you said about, AI. I believe it's pretty cool. I have a background in computer science. I used to be a developer for many years. As I always say, I keep the glasses, So I'm a nerd, I love that. I love technology. I embrace it. I use ChatGPT, but mainly, for example, the show notes. I say, hey, we discussed, ChatGPT. This is what we discussed in the episode. Give me the show notes. But I think I'm not hurting anybody. I try to curate, of course, the show notes, but
Yeah.
posting on LinkedIn, commenting on LinkedIn, and it's like, okay, like where do we draw the line? And I think that, of course, there's pushback whenever something new gets released, but there's a barrier that I think that it's very thin. For example, a few 1 or 2 months ago, I came across this tool that I don't recall the name for real. I don't remember the name, but I saved the link somewhere. It was an, AI influencer platform that it's like basically instead of tech, text to speech, text to influencer, and there was a demo video, and there was someone, on camera saying like a Loom video, hey, here you choose from these topics and these creators, and wait, here's a list of creators, and hey, that's me because guess what? I'm AI too. And it was like, what?
Yeah.
Really? And it's like, no way. So where do we draw the line? Like
Yeah.
it
Exactly.
looks like a human, but it's not a human. So what do we define as influence after all?
Yeah.
Because AI can have influence. It's like, okay, so do we trust everything we see online? Or like the other day, I'm ashamed of saying this, but I really am. I'm married to my wife. I love them. I have 5-year-old twins, but this is me in a photo. It's a picture of a friend. We did it was a swimming race back in January, and we were, hugging after the race with a medal. One friend of mine took that photo. It wasn't a video, it wasn't a live, it was a photo. It turned it into a video with a prompt like kiss each other. And I'm
Oh,
not, I was I and it was like so real that if it was not coming from a friend, sent directly to my wife, and it was, let's say, even a guy or a woman that I was kissing, I was going to get into a lot of trouble because it was so legit. I didn't kiss the guy, by the way, but it was so legit that it's like, what the fuck? With
yeah.
politicians, with TV, or let's say, public personalities, like, it's like, okay, what is all this? Because it's really interesting but dangerous at the same time.
Yeah, we're entering into a very strange realm. And again, I'm also a proponent of AI in a lot of capacities, right? And I think that there's great ways to use the tool and then other ways that, as you said, crosses a line. Um, but it is becoming really real. TikTok actually released a creator studio that is one of those influencer kind of artificial platforms. And they that was very impressive as far as the realistic kind of people who had it. But there's a part of it that is, you can tell, right? You can tell it's fake. And I don't think, and only, I mean, time will tell, right? Like if ads convert, like the best ad's going to win. But I do have a prediction and I have a feeling in the same way that kind of curated AGC content has now kind of fallen to the wayside and like again, the more authentic testimonial from a real customer actually still wins. That's only going to be more intense, I believe, as time goes on, just because it's going to be harder and harder to know what is real and what isn't, and what to trust. And so there's certain aspects to an authentic video that is real, right? So we will see as time goes on.
Are you real?
I might not
Am I
be.
real? It's the Matrix. So going, one of the last questions I have for you, we discussed at length how we can use, all these with social platforms such as Meta, TikTok, etc. What about marketplaces like Amazon, Walmart? How can we, or how can brands leverage influencer marketing there?
Awesome. Yeah. So marketplaces are actually one of the top channels our clients utilize for influencer marketing, especially Amazon. So the reason behind that, we are seeing Walmart and TikTok slowly gain some more traction, even Walmart and Target. But the reason why marketplaces have become very popular on our platform is, first off, they attract a huge amount of consumer base, right? Like, I think the stat was like 45% of consumers online across every single marketplace and website buy through Amazon, right? Whether that's a positive or negative thing. But the bottom line is marketplaces are becoming more and more competitive, right? And they're search engines at the end of the day. So about 73% of people, if I got that stat right, don't even go past the first page when they search for something on Amazon, right? You got like 45 listings, like you got enough stuff there to make your decision. There are thousands, if not hundreds of thousands or millions of pages for some search terms. And so, let alone if you're not on the first page, but if you're on the 100th page, right? Or the 5,000th page, like no one's going to see your product. And so how do you break through? And influencers are one of the best ways to do that. And the bottom line with it is marketplaces love external traffic. So they consider someone who's already on Amazon searching for a product, like that's Amazon's customer, right? But if you all of a sudden brought someone from a Facebook ad or an influencer marketing campaign over to your Amazon listing, right? That's a potential new customer for Amazon. Probably not. They've probably gone on Amazon before, but they went to your website or your channel first instead of going to Amazon to buy, right? And that's valuable to Amazon because obviously they're making money off that sale. And so Amazon, Walmart, Target, they prioritize these types of sales and help your listing grow in that ranking or search positioning, right? They'll show you for more keywords, higher position within those keywords, etc. That's the first layer of value that brands use from our platforms and see extremely amazing results from. The second is once you're there, right? Once you're in that visibility to consumers when they search for something on that first or top pages, how do you compete? We call it being sticky, right? Do you stay there? And the way to do that is to actually convert on now that organic traffic that is finding you by searching through a marketplace like Amazon. And now there's more competition again than ever in that realm, and people are getting really good at branding. So to differentiate yourself, also utilizing not just the social promotions and the influencer relationships to get that external traffic to drive up that rank, but also then utilizing that UGC content in your profiles to create that social proof and enable actually that new visibility of consumers to actually convert. And there's a lot of new tools out there, especially on the Amazon marketplace, that have enabled kind of this integration with UGC. They have something called the post system, which is kind of almost like an Instagram feed that you can integrate into your Amazon profile. They even have now kind of like somewhat of a TikTok competitor app called the Inspire app that can have your UGC integrated into, right? And then especially in what in the Amazon ecosystem they call the brand store, or kind of like on your product, you have a grid where it's almost half of a website. And Amazon's really pushing for this to almost create every listing and every brand as a really like high converting website. And what a website is content. And so utilizing that influencer content will kind of put you a step ahead of a lot of the competition. And once you're there, actually convert on that traffic. So We love working with Amazon brands. It's one of the most effective ways to actually beat the competition when you're dealing with the marketplace, even though influencer marketing works regardless of whether you're selling on WooCommerce, Shopify,
Yeah,
website, any marketplace, but you really can win it big on the Amazon side of things.
that's great. So the last question I have for you is, do you have by any chance a book to recommend to the audience? We put together a list of books every single year that were, books that were mentioned here in the on the pod. Do you happen to have any?
I got one for you. Book I read recently is called Biology, but buy spelled Buy and then ology, right? Basically the science of why we buy. And could not recommend to anyone in the marketing space, whether or even just in the e-commerce space, whether you're a founder or kind of heading on marketing, because it's just amazing scientific insights into all of these different studies that were done on, and they kind of accumulated a lot of stuff. I've read it actually in other books, but they did a really good job of making it digestible and also extremely informative. But very simple science of why you buy. It's super crazy things about things that you wouldn't actually expect, right? Like, does sex sell? Like, all these kind of also established like ideas that we have in marketing that never really had data to back it up, and they really bring it all together. So, highly recommend that.
I'll
Quick read.
be. I love what you just said about the book. I'll give it a shot. I'll add it to my wish list, and I love the fact that we have a new book to add it to our list because typically, of course, we read more or less the same things here, and this is a new one. And whenever there's a new book, I love it because there's a new one to add to the list and to have to add to my wish list as well. So you've been great. I wanted to thank you for coming on the pod. Very interesting insights, a very different, episode from the typical episodes we do with founders in, in a very special time of the year. This is going to air, mid-October more or less. So it's, Black Friday is coming, Q4 is here. So it's a lot to digest, and influencer marketing for Q4 2025, etc. It's something for brands to consider if they are not doing it, or to probably level up the game and do it more professionally. So before you go, where can people go to learn more about you and Stack Influence?
So you can find us on basically all of the social channels at Stack Influence, but best way to get in touch with us is via our website, which is stackinfluence.com. And then you can also send me a personal email if you wish at william@stackinfluence.com. And very easy to sign up. You can either do a self-serve sign up on the platform, you can get in touch with us and we can give you our sales team or account management team, give you a full demo of how everything works. And beautiful thing about Stack Influence, it's all automated. So you don't need a team to manage these things. You set a goal and then the platform sets out to achieve the goal, and you pay as you go and you pay for what you get. So again, appreciate having me on, Brian. Really great chat, and excited to have more people jump into the influencer world.
Yeah, totally. And for those who are listening now, please, if you're not there, go to the dtcinsider.com. Make sure to find this episode, and you will find all the show notes, including the social handles for Stack Influence, the website, and you are on LinkedIn too, right?
I'm on LinkedIn. Yes, you can always connect with me there as well.
Amazing. So you should find his LinkedIn as well. Will, it was a pleasure to have you here on the show. Thank you.
Thank you.